And welcome as you're coming into the room here. You are in the right place if you are hoping to be at the BHI Network Policy Group meeting for April. I'm very happy to see you. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. I am going to be recording this meeting today for those of you who are not able to join us, and I'll be sure to send out that video link in an upcoming BHI Network Policy Digest. So we'll go ahead and get our meeting started with our land acknowledgement. We would like to open this convening by recognizing that we are in the unceded ancestral land of the Coast Salish peoples, the traditional home of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. We cannot work to fulfill our mission and our vision of an anti-racist present if we don't first acknowledge and recognize the true history and cost of colonization. However, acknowledgement is only a first step, and we urge you to engage in accountable actions and relationships and informed actions. First, just a few announcements. Please be sure to send me any updates and info for a policy digest that are for the good of the whole. I do look to you to stay informed on news that's pertinent to our shared priority to increase Black homeownership. And if you're not yet signed up for our weekly BHI Network Policy Digest, please do so. And then please do share with others. We want to continue to grow this network and our impact. And now we're beyond that time for signing in pro on our bills, which I'm sure some of you might be happy to hear. That's a lot of clicking that happens during the legislative session. And at this point, our bills must be voted pretty much off the floor before the opposite House cutoff on Wednesday, April 16th. In this process, some bills have made it this far. Others have not, but many of our lead priorities are there, and I am very happy to announce that the passage of the first bill on our homeownership policy framework has happened. We had the passage of HB 1413, the condo reform bill by Representative Taylor, and it passed out of the Senate and is going to go through a small amount of kind of informal concurrence, and then it will head on to the governor's desk. So once again, we have one solid win, and we are going to keep racking them up. We have multiple bills in the process right now. So if they pass that opposite chamber, then they may go on to concurrence. Basically, the process of if there are amendments in one chamber and different amendments in the other, they have to figure it out. They have to vote it to its final form, and then it goes to the governor's desk. And that's what we hope for our bills. But again, at any time, even those right here in this final stretch could be ended. And so we will keep asking for your advocacy. We will keep asking for you to step in. And we also want to just share this moment of celebration to say that we wouldn't be here without you. The condo reform bill is not a small achievement. It is one of the first major condo reforms in many years, and it is going to directly affect the type of options that we will have for homeownership. So, you know, you need something to kind of North Star you today, or just a pickup. There's a lot going on in life right now. Put it there, I hope, a little bit. So by the time we finish with today's meeting, you should be up to date on legislative activity. But I do hope today that you will leave with so much more. You're here because you're deeply committed to our shared priority to increase Black homeownership. But I also hope that you're here because you gain a sense of community through this like-minded work. Today we'll spend the first part of our meeting in community, and I'm hoping that you will step forward and share. We are going to start first with the reflections on the fact that tomorrow, April 11th, will be the anniversary of the Fair Housing Act. And then we will also acknowledge and hold space for a great loss in our community, the sudden death of Frank Chop on March 22nd. And I know that grief is a dynamic experience. It's unique to every loss. But in essence, it is an expression of the connection that we've had with someone. And it is a way that we honor their memory and we celebrate their life. And so we're going to take some time to do that as well. After spending some time in reflection on these two things, we're also going to honor Frank's legacy by continuing our work together. I'll try to make that transition as seamless as possible. It's going to be unusual, but this work that we are doing here is work he found profoundly important, just as I assume you do, and that is why you are here today. And so I know that in the spirit of his legacy, moving forward and continuing to educate ourselves and put ourselves in a position to make change would be the right next step. So Jesse Simpson of HDC is going to help us understand where the legislative process is right now around budgets. There have been many twists and turns that have happened this year, and they have affected the Housing Trust Fund and many other programs. And so we're all hoping for the possibility of ending this session by April 27th, but it is the paramount duty of the legislature to have a budget. So we'll get a little bit of insight there. Brady Nordstrom of HDC will provide us with an update on the 2 condo bills in our framework, and I'll provide an update on the remaining kind of lead framework bills. Jesse will then return to the floor to update us on our Seattle Comprehensive Plan. And today we'll get to hear a little bit more from Jessica Yang, our new HDC community organizer, who will have some time to introduce herself a little bit more, tell you about her role, and hopefully leave with a feeling of welcome and the possibility of potential future connection with many of you in this network. And then we'll end with some open floor time with news from you. So tomorrow, the Fair Housing Act bill will have an anniversary. This bill was introduced in 1966, thanks to pressure from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and other civil rights advocates. And for 2 years, the bill went nowhere. And it was a great disappointment to Dr. King, who said, quote, "When that bill died in Congress, a bit of democracy died, a bit of our commitment to justice died." And after Dr. King was assassinated on April 4th of 1968, there was a push for the passage of the bill to honor Dr. King's legacy. And just 1 week later, the Fair Housing Act was signed into law. So unfortunately, policy passage does not equal policy implementation. And as we all know, because we're in this room for this reason, our Black homeownership rate today is lower than it was before the passage of the Fair Housing Act. And this is why we're here together to reaffirm our commitment to justice. And I just had the privilege of leading the room brought together by Habitat for Humanity, Seattle King and Kittitas County and Seattle, and also Habitat for Humanity International at the National African American Museum here in Seattle. They had an event called Dream to Reality, Advancing Equity in Homeownership. And one of the guests in that event was Dr. Bernice King, the youngest daughter of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so thinking about that loss for her on a personal level, and then also, what it was spurring forward in this Fair Housing Act. So my mind's swimming right now, just in terms of all of the things I've just experienced and heard, literally went from there to here. And so I'm very interested to hear how you're all feeling and wondering, what are your reflections on this anniversary of the Fair Housing Act? And why are you just, dedicated to increasing home ownership opportunities for Black households? I'm sure you all have many things to do, many ways to expend your energy, and you are here with us today, whether you're here in the moment or you'll be watching this later, or you're tuning in every time that we're sending out one of our policy digests and clicking those clicks. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so I can see everyone a little bit more. And then I am opening up the floor here for reflections. We are towards the anniversary. Tomorrow will be the anniversary of the Fair Housing Act. and hoping that I can get some volunteers in the room here to share a reflection. And you know, the reflection may not be, I think it can be a very mixed feeling, right? If that act weren't there, many things may not have gone forward the way they had. And also, as that act being there, we are still seeing that, you know, that mission is not fulfilled.
I'll go first. I'm feeling hopeful, and I'm feeling, for one, to just keep it in small sound bites. Uh, Grateful that we had the CRP funds. The CRP funds really shed a light on the need and the ability of people to purchase and the want to want a home. So I'm feeling hopeful that we get more CRP funding to take us to continue taking us to that next level.
Thank you, Linda. Kathleen?
Thanks for bringing this up. My reflection on this is that laws don't always help, and we've seen the fair housing laws be used against the very purpose that we all share in this conversation. And as someone whose prior work before I got to Homestead was about change management, I think we need to activate not only the policy space and the legal space, but also hearts and minds. That's harder work to do. But I think we will, and BHI in particular, and the network is active on that, in that hearts and minds space. But we cannot put our trust in laws. We have to also be working to help people see why this is a benefit for everyone, why equal access to opportunity is something that everyone should care about. Not just, this isn't about a special, it's about us collectively, thriving communities, and all those things that I know you all agree with. So that's my reflection.
Kathleen, that reflection really strikes me because, like I said, we just left a room in which we heard from Dr. King. And she said the exact same thing, the power of unity. And that was the power of the message, the power of the unity, the power of the care, of the love.
I'll share that I think my reflection right now is how easy it can be to cause harm and oppression. That's very easy to do and can happen very instantaneously, and the hammer can come down hard, and it takes a lot of generational work to unwind that and to heal it. And I think, you know, the goal is to have many of these kind of similar anniversaries in the future, and it's going to take many years and many generations and a lot of collaboration. And that work to, you know, create those thriving communities is a lot more longitudinal and collaborative than it was to create that harm in the first place. And we have to keep our eye on the ball always for many, many years and many, many people.
Thanks for that, Rebecca. Would anyone else like to share kind of a, look like Ms. Ruby here? I see in the chat, and it looks like Ms. Ruby's not having the ability to speak with their microphone. So I'm going to go ahead and read through their comment if that's okay. So she's feeling that it's a terrible time because Black history and our achievements, as well as our heroes, are under attack in the highest office of the land. But that it is encouraging that we are still moving forward with the dream of Black homeownership here in Washington State. thank you for those reflections, Ms. Ruby. Is there anyone else who would like to share a reflection on this anniversary of the Fair Housing Act? I'm going to offer that I do understand that Habitat did record this morning's event that had Dr. King, also had Nicole Bascom of our BHI core group, as well as Richard Rothstein, who wrote both The Color of Law and then with his daughter Leah Rothstein, Just Action. And it was a very layered conversation, and I hope to be able to kind of forward that link to you all so that you can have that moment to digest it. You know, we live in very complicated moments, and we always have. And this work has always been happening. And I'm really inspired that you're here today, making yourself purposefully dedicated to this moving forward. So thank you for being in this space, and thank you for staying connected, and we'll do what we can to try and build that unity and continue the work towards the good trouble, the beloved community. You know, we may not see everything happen the way we thought it should come together, but we are still here together, and we're still going to be able to keep moving things forward. So thank you for being here. If there isn't another comment that someone would like to make or reflection, I am going to move us forward to recognition of a big change that has actually occurred for us here in Washington State with the passage out of this life of Representative Frank Chop on March 22nd. It was an unexpected death, and people are still processing that. I keep waiting for a call on my phone because I would just get them randomly about what's going on and what we're doing next and what's our next strategy. And people are holding this loss in different ways. But I do want to at least communicate to people in this group how absolutely essential this work was to Representative Frank Chop. A community organizer at heart, back straight into community organizing the minute that he was out of the legislative environment, walking around with that folder full of all those ideas and all of the schemes and the plans and the calling the people, and yeah, we're going to get that done, and this is what we're going to do, and that incredible creative energy that I experienced. So yeah, so I'm going to open the floor here for people to share a reflection or anything they would like to share about how they're feeling about this loss in our community. Denise?
Thanks. Can folks hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, let's see. You know, I think a lot of times when somebody who is, such a prominent figure passes away, it can be easy to feel like you're not entitled to your grief that you have around it. Um, I didn't have Frank on speed dial, right? I wouldn't, there are a lot of people who would name him as their mentor in legislative work, and I, couldn't go that far for sure. But I think, he was somebody who really took a community organizer approach to his work in a way that I don't think we see very often with folks who have been in an elected position for as long as he was. Of course, I've known who he was since I've lived in Washington State in the early 90s when I moved here. But, there was some point where I was complaining about how folks were talking about home ownership in legislative spaces. And, I mentioned it in a meeting. I maybe even just put it in the chat. And he, commented, yeah, let's get together. I want to talk to you about that. And he did, I think actually his LA followed up with me, I didn't even have to follow up myself. We set up time to go have coffee and I shared, my opinion and why I thought the messaging was wrong. And he agreed and saw my perspective and then just sort of immediately started talking about ideas that he had for changes he wanted to see, who else should we involve? It was like a classic like sort of textbook community organizing approach that it was just so effective. I felt so heard and valued. And then after that, whenever he had anything involving homeownership, he would reach out and invite me to be part of the conversation. Um, it felt like I was really being, sort of called in. And so I just developed a great respect for that based on my personal experience and working closely as part of the Covenant homeownership core team, just kind of getting to be in a lot of small group meetings with Frank. His dedication, his willingness to work behind the scenes, and from my perspective, to see what great allyship looks like. It's just really great. And I think about him every day. I think one of the hardest things for me is knowing that very few Washingtonians know everything that he's done to change their lives for the better. So, I've been trying to share, like on my Facebook, writing about all just the huge, huge things that he's done that have really helped, particularly poor people in our state. And just wanting to make sure that people know because he just got a lot of things done and most of us just sort of go about our lives and we never really think about who's behind great programs like Apple Health for kids or the Housing Trust Fund or any of these things. So it was pretty edifying to have a couple of people respond to my post that I made saying, oh wow, I didn't know he did all that, like thanks for sharing, what a loss. So anyway, I think that's kind of my, I don't want to say vendetta, but that's sort of just like a thing I'm on right now is kind of just making sure people know all of the great work that he did. And yeah. So anyway, thanks for making space for that.
Thank
Today.
you for sharing,
Appreciate you.
Denise. I know it's not easy to do. And I appreciate you being willing to do so. Is there anyone else who would like to offer a reflection? Rebecca?
Yeah, that was really beautiful, Denise. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate about Frank. He had time for everybody, literally, and I cannot tell you like how many times I had a meeting set up by his LA or somebody on his team that was just with undergraduate students, who had a good idea about how to increase affordable housing in Seattle and, wanted to involve Sound Transit in some way. And he was always ready for ideas from anybody. He was always willing and ready to give everybody their space and an ear to them if they had institutional power or not, which again is a bedrock of community organizing, right? It's, recognizing the inherent power and activation of any individual with a good idea and some heart, no matter who's backing them or how much power they have. And so I really appreciated that about him. obviously a huge influence on me personally as one of the architects of the 80-80-80 statute that Sound Transit uses for its affordable housing program. It's my current employer. So he was really personally attached to all of these projects. You know, we would give tours to him. I gave him a tour of our Linwood site few months ago, and he asked how he could help in the upcoming session and how he could make connections. And his heart was really in it, and you could feel that, and that made him such an incredibly valuable resource, was that heart and that ability and desire to listen again to everybody and to be, you know, building that coalition and community, even if it was quieter, you know, even if it was more behind the scenes, even if it was in front of the legislature, he was always out there really doing the work. And I miss him greatly. Huge loss. And thanks again for making space for that.
Thank you for sharing, Rebecca. Is there anyone else who would like to share? And I appreciate people sharing. I also appreciate that, you know, this isn't the venue, that's not the moment for you. So, you know, everyone will contribute in their own way. Cliff?
Yeah. So I remember the night that I heard he died, and I remember just sitting on the couch and I yelled out, "No!" And my wife came down and was like, "What's wrong?" And I, told her Frank Chop died. And, we started talking about my short experiences with him, but, um, you know, I really appreciated what Denise shared, because that's how I felt. Albeit, I feel like well, not feel like, but I did know him for a shorter period of time. But when I got to know him, at least on a working basis, I was amazed at how much of the same energy and the same kind of organizer spirit that that I've known and admired all my life, that he still held on to that. And one of the things that I always just respected, and I remember just being amazed at, is how committed he stayed. In my personal life, I do other work in the community. It's separate from my work with commerce. And a couple of people that I work with, when I mentioned that he died, they said, "Oh my God, no way! We were just meeting with him." And that's the kind of person Frank Chop was. He was someone who wasn't just some power player that you'd read about in news. He would go with people, he'd walk with them, he'd drive with them, he would march with them, and he got the work done. And he realized the work was more than having a position, or more than being at certain tables, but about really going into the community and lifting people up and empowering them. And that's the memory that I have of him. And in many ways, I was very inspired by him. So, and also, honestly, I am deeply concerned about the times that we live in on a personal level. Then this is not me saying this as a representative of commerce, but there are so many of heroes and lions of good just causes that we are losing these days in these uncertain times. And on the one hand, I feel like that calls us to be better. It calls us to be braver. It calls us to stand strong and stiffen our spines, or stiffen our upper lip, as my grandparents used to say, or stiffen my lower lip. But you know, it's also scary because, you know, at the very times where we feel like we need those elders and those leaders in the community, it seems like a lot of folks are going away or things are changing. And I'm navigating that. I know others are, but I don't know. Sometimes when I get down, I just think about people like Frank Chop and think about the fact that have the terrible but awesome privilege of being able to carry on that work. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Cliff. And it's funny because we're all processing so many things that are happening every day. And I'm sure that we are running between inspiration and despair, right? Like that is just kind of the two bases that we seem to be touching a bit of, and in between and all around and even further out. And I remember when I had a last conversation with Frank, and it wasn't quite clear what level of government we were talking about with what we were saying. And it was like, yeah, no, not that Washington, this Washington. Like, we can't touch that Washington right now, but we got this Washington, and we're going to keep moving forward. So, we are all here in this Washington, and we are all doing this work together, and it does have ramifications nationally. It does, absolutely. So again, just thank you all for being here today, for sharing some of your feelings, and and just being here today. Denise, I'm gonna go ahead, and if it's okay, I am going to move us forward in topic, but if you'd like to kind of have the final word, I'd be happy for that as well.
I'll put it in the chat.
Okay. So all of these things we are thinking of, again, could weigh on us heavy, but I do want to reiterate, that we're in this change together and that we are creating change. We have our first bill has passed. We have more that will be coming along. And this is a critical moment for us. So in order for us to understand where we're going from, really we have theoretically 3 more weeks of this session, but there is work both within our session, after the session ends, things that are happening on a local level. This is not just state work for all of us. So I do want to keep you informed. And in that vein, I'm going to shift us over into hearing a little bit about the budget. If you have been looking for some dramatic, turns in the story of the budget this year, you have found it. It has been quite topsy-turvy and hard to follow. And so I am hoping that Jesse Simpson will be able to provide us with just a little bit more of where are we and where were we, and more importantly, where are we going? So I'm going to turn that over to Jesse.
Sure. I'll do my best to fill in. So first off, on the capital budget, both the House and Senate have released their proposals, and they make major investments in the Housing Trust Fund. Slightly different numbers. The House proposal is $598 million, and the Senate proposal is $600 million. And one other thing I would highlight is the Connecting Housing to Infrastructure program, or CHIP, which is used to fund the infrastructure needed to go alongside affordable housing developments. The House has allocated $100 million there for that CHIP program, and the Senate has proposed 65. So we're really thankful for both chambers in terms of prioritizing affordable housing, even in a tough budget year, with record investments through the capital budget in affordable housing. In terms of the previous biennium, after the supplemental budget, they ultimately got to, I believe it was 527 million overall. It was 400 million in the first year, and then they bumped it up in the second year of the biennium. So it's yeah, by all accounts, record investments in affordable housing production, covering the gamut from affordable rental housing, permanent supportive housing, and homeownership developments. In terms of CHIP, yes, I believe that homeownership is eligible for CHIP, and the Senate proposal, or the House proposal, sorry, it includes also a $10 million set aside for the Fort Lawton development, which I want to get on everyone's radar. It's coming back. If you've been paying attention to this, it's been in progress in some ways since I was in 4th grade, when the Army began the disposition process for this land adjacent to Discovery Park. It's been held up in a series of environmental appeals. And then most recently, back in 2018 and 2019, there's a push to get it moving forward, got approved, but then got mired up in kind of infrastructure cost issues and escalations before getting restarted in 2022. It's coming back with increased amount of housing allowed, and the proposal is there's an open RFP, and the proposal brings forward both homeownership, permanent supportive housing, and rental housing, all in this high opportunity site in Magnolia. So more to come on that. We are expecting some sort of public hearing in the near future. Stay tuned from Bambi on details on how to support that in particular. Any questions? I can run through sort of the proposed, the 2 proposed budgets on the capital side in terms of their individual allocations for homeownership, if that's of interest to everyone. Yeah, really want to call out, yeah, Denise, great call out in the chat. I think we're really only where we are on the Housing Trust Fund because of the tireless advocacy of Frank Chop over decades. I think it's a lot of us at this point in time, you know, we're operating in a moment where affordable housing is widely seen as a priority, and people from all walks of the political spectrum in life see that housing affordability is a huge challenge. That wasn't always the case, and I think Frank Chop got his start in a time when it was seen as a much more marginal issue. Yeah.
Jesse, can you give us a sense, you know, part of the budget drama was that the Senate went for progressive revenue options that could allow for a lot of what they had in those initial budgets. And then we heard from the governor that the intangibles tax was not one that he would be able to support, therefore he would veto it if it was included as a revenue source. And they had to go back to the table. And so now at this moment, you know, when you're seeing these new budgets, are these reflecting that potential revenue out, I'm assuming, or is this going to be a like, how do they fill the gap if that revenue's not there? And we haven't really seen the cutting yet.
Yeah. So, I mean, the good news on capital budget is that one faced far fewer issues in terms of budget shortfalls compared to the operating budget. All of the progressive taxes used by both House and Senate proposed budgets in slightly different forms. They use a combination of a payroll tax and a wealth tax to balance the budget, along with some cuts. And the message from Governor Ferguson is to substantially scale back that financial intangibles tax, and to only, basically caution around using a kind of untested constitutionally tax to balance the budget in such a big way. He signaled his interest in supporting a version with raising up to 100 million in revenue as a tester, basically. So that opens up a roughly $1 billion hole. And I think the legislature is doing right now is charging through all the other pieces of the state legislative session. And then we'll have the difficult conversations around what to cut on the operating budget, what other taxes to increase, and how to come to an accord. Any other questions there?
All right. Well, so in terms of budget, it's all still kind of on the table. On some, we know that the table's only so big, and there's going to be a lot of movement. So if you are, you are invested in a budget proviso, if you are invested in that housing trust fund not being reduced, but continuing to stay at a record level, then we'll be providing you with those opportunities so that you can continue to lean in and use your voice for that. Because that's a big number, 600 million. And the conversation starts to become, well, what if it's 5? Or how about we take 20 million off the top? Or how about if we, because we're talking about programs that may or may not be funded. And so these are difficult conversations. Thank you for providing us with that overview, Jesse. And now we're going to go ahead and move forward to Brady, who I hope can at least punctuate for us a little bit of excitement. Like, I want to see a little bit of the celebration emojis here, because Brady has put in a ton of work on the 2 condo bills. One has passed, and want to show great appreciation for all of the work that has gone into that. And we can hear a little bit more from Brady about, what that significance looks like.
Great. Thank you, Bambi. And I see 1 celebration, 2 celebrations. So yeah, so I'll just start with a high-level overview, and I'll get to sort of where we're at now. And there's even been changes since yesterday when I drafted some of the comments. So I'll share those at the end, and I'll try and end on a high note. First of all, I'm Brady Nordstrom, he, him, pronouns. I am with HDC. And so the 2 bills that we're talking about is House Bill 1403 and House Bill 1516. And we've been framing this all along as these are a package of condo liability reform bills. Representative Taylor has been a champion of these efforts. There's a big emphasis here on the supply side, but when we combine House Bill 1516, we get to permanently affordable homeownership units as well. Representative Hill has been leading the charge on House Bill 1516. So to distinguish these 2 bills, again, just as a quick refresher, House Bill 1403, this is the implied warranty language. There were some pretty broad language in state statutes. For example, that like the generally accepted standards at the time. So if you do that, someone can pay an expert to come in and say, this was the standard. And then whoever's defending can have someone else come in and say, this is the standard. It created a big mess with liability and a lot of risk. And House Bill 1403 also has a warranty for small condos, which are 12 units or less, and 2 floors, or if one of the floors is parking, it can be 3 floors, and ADUs built as condos. And if that sounds like it might apply to middle housing, that's the idea. is that this is something that can help unlock more flexibility with the models for middle housing production. So that's a huge thing. And as Bambi was saying at the beginning of the meeting, this has been a saga over well over a decade. In 2009, there were some changes because of some issues around like water penetration between units, and so this since then, condos represent 5.3% of the overall housing stock in Washington, and this is from a Commerce study. And since 2011, after that, some changes took effect. They're less than 1% of production going forward. So that means every year since then, condos have been shrinking as the overall supply in the state. So that's the first bill, House Bill 1403 is taking on these warranties. House Bill 1516 is a study. So what permanently affordable homeownership units or sponsoring organizations, which are usually nonprofits, they can be limited equity co-ops, they can also be governments. So there's a lot of models that like this. There's deed restricted models. There's land trusts. So there's a lot that goes into this. The issues that are faced by these organizations are different than some of the issues that come up in 1403. And so we want to study these challenges and come up with solutions for the future. So this is an important first step. So that was a little bit more than a short summary, I think. But I think that these bills are important because we want to unlock condo production in Washington State. Condos, and this is data from 2022 in Seattle. Condos are, if you compare them across to the median sale price of condos to townhomes, they're about $250,000 less on, and then they're about $400,000 less than a single family homes. So this is a more accessible option for many families. And we need a variety of housing choices. So that's kind of the background a little bit. And another reason that this is important, and especially to this group, is that condos, these can get to low to moderate income Black households. This is a great entry point into the market and to start building equity and start building sort of for families and individuals. So I guess I'll kind of take a moment now to reflect on where we're at. And I should say before I get into that this is due to a large group of people. There are businesses, there are major employers, there are nonprofits, there are community groups. Of course, we have our legislative champions. All of these people have been working together, and many people on this call have played some role. And so I just wanted to, first of all, say thank you to everyone. I think that there's a reason this has been identified as an issue for a while, and it hasn't quite been solved. And we're hoping that this is going to be the step that is going to finally unlock this production. And just, it's kind of anecdotal, but in talking to some industry associations of home builders, for example, they weren't initially interested in this bill because none of their members even wanted to touch condos anymore. They wanted to do single family homes, or I mean, I guess when you get into multifamily, people wanted to do apartments instead. And this is documented in reports as well. So thank you everyone who's played a part. House Bill 1403, as Bambi mentioned, on Tuesday, it passed the Senate with a 47-1 vote and then 1 absent. That's almost unanimous support. So first of all, that is a huge milestone. So I'll just take a breath and say thank you again to everyone for that. The reconciliation process here is it's really actually just removing 1.3 in a reference to a state bill. So there's not major hurdles at this point. There don't seem to be. So it's a really optimistic moment. House Bill 1516. I was going to come in here and say we need this to move out of rules in the Senate. Well, yesterday there's an email that came from the Lieutenant Governor's office that this bill got moved out of rules, and so it can go to the floor for a vote at any moment. So I'm going to put a quick action alert into the chat there. If anyone, you can share that. Again, this is a very timely thing that this is going to go directly to your senator. But we have a last sort of push to get an affirmative vote. This one, when it passed out of the House and it passed out of committees in the Senate, it's a little, it's not like 1403 where it's unanimous. There's enough support to pass it, but we need more of this lift here to get this one over this finish line. And I should add again that this one, it addresses permanently affordable home ownership models. And these are going to get to the lowest income levels that can help families that have the least amount of means to get into home ownership in the first place, which is so core to a lot of the work. So I'll kind of pause there and see if there are any questions, but I think that's an overview of where we're at. Hopefully later this week or early next week before the cutoff on Wednesday, we'll have more good news, and this will be another thing to celebrate. But for now, I'm just trying to keep pushing and just appreciate all the help. So.
Thank you so much for that, Brady. Does anyone have a quick question for Brady at all? And I'm going to emphasize that I would really love you all to take that 1 minute and send this letter. I think, as Brady was saying, you know, we think we are pulled into the hopper to go to the Senate, but every time that a legislator is getting a letter from a constituent and it is saying, hey, I really think this is important, it can be a big difference in the way that they're thinking about voting. And in the House vote, it was a little bit more, you know, it wasn't as unanimous as we saw in the other bill. And so we really want to make sure that we're getting over the edge so that it's passing, but also so that it's passing strong. So I hope you all lean in a little bit there, take the effort to go ahead and hit that link. Take you about 20 seconds to do it. All right, thank you so much, Brady. And I hope the next time we see you, it'll be because, you know, we're celebrating the twin win here.
Great, thank you.
All right. So just on the heels of that, in speaking with Representative Taylor, she has really been moving those two condo bills as her kind of supply side addressing of the issues we're working on. And then the CHA, the Covenant Homeownership Act trailer bill, has been moving forward on that kind of demand side for the home buyer themselves. And so she has been talking to people about those as a kind of a threesome, a whole package. And so we have also seen, we are waiting for a Senate floor vote on the Covenant Homeownership Act trailer bill right now. We saw that it moved yesterday from rules to a second review of rules, which is often going to be when you're going to see it put in the hopper and then come up to the Senate floor. But as Brady mentioned, you know, those bills that don't pass the Senate floor by Wednesday of next week, they're dead. So I don't take for granted, even when I'm hearing that good news of, we know we have that support, I don't take for granted that we're going to get there until we're arrived. And so I have put in the chat here another opportunity for you to send to both your House and your Senate leaders, because Covenant Homeownership Act trailer bill has had a really difficult journey this year. We have weathered 20 unfriendly amendments, 20 amendments on a bill that has like 3 changes to it. They are not significant changes. It's in terms of like how it's written or how complex it is. It had absolutely nothing to do with that. You might want to see 20 amendments in a budget. You might want to see 20 amendments on a super technical law. But when you see 20 amendments on 3 very, you know, significant in terms of what will happen for homeowners, but not complex changes, that's politics at work. And we have been a very shiny golden object for opponents. The 5 hours of going through 15 amendments in the House was incredibly harmful and unnecessary. It was just a moment to take space, create chaos, and to create harm. And we know that our members of color caucus members are feeling really worn right now in terms of having to manage this. So we are hoping that on the Senate floor, we will not see that. The Senate is a smaller body. Senator Lovick, who was the original sponsor of the Senate version of the Covenant Homeownership Act, has a very good reputation in the Senate and is very well respected. And we are hoping that in the Senate, we'll see a little better behavior. It is typically true, you know, they might get up and they'll say, I think this, but then they'll sit down, as opposed to one amendment after another. And so we're hoping to not have a redo of what we saw in the House and the Senate. And a big part of that is going to be you using that link and sending out the message that you support this. We're not going back. We're not going to take these 3 things we're asking for and just drop them on the floor. We have Democratic caucus support, but there's always that chance of things getting deprioritized. You know, the entire Democratic caucus is trying to figure out a budget soon. They are trying to get through the bills and be able to get to that budget and end their session. So we're not going to assume priority. We are hearing from our champions that they are putting them in path. But because we've had so many amendments, even when this bill passes in the Senate, there will be a more complicated concurrence process to make sure that the different amendments are good. And we're a little concerned that in that floor moment, we will see more of this drama coming forward. So yeah, as I've said before, it's not 2023 and people are just out showing their positioning, doing it in doublespeak, but it is there, it's harmful, and this bill is a target. So we need to make sure that you are supporting it in any way that you can. So that is one way you can do it. That is a concrete action you can do. And that's where we are. So I hope to have good news for you soon as well. I hope to have news that we have passed the Senate floor, that we did not see a bunch of, you know, distracting and harmful amendments, and that the concurrence process is not going to be as drama filled. I quite frankly, no one needs that right now. We're tired. So, you know, we want to make this happen. I want to remind you all that we are talking about 300 households having been served just since the money has been released in July of last year. There are 700 households right now with the commission in the process of reviewing their personal family histories because they want to be the next homeowners who are using this program. That's 1,000 people. That's huge. And we have a goal. We have a goal of a priority of trying to have 1,500 new to low moderate income Black households in home ownership in this next 5 years. And that is a significant proportion of that when you start to look at the data broken down by race, and you see that of like the 270 that were passed, you know, 220 of those are Black households. And by expanding the area median income from 100% to 120%, we'll be able to see households being able to consider home ownership in King County, which is not that easy to achieve when you are at 80% AMI, 100% AMI, 120% AMI, and when you do not have that intergenerational wealth of that large down payment to add in those assets. So it is very important. The loan forgiveness that is being asked for in the trailer bill is essential. It is going to provide flexibility and choice for homeowners so that, you know, they're able to make the choices that are right for their family. And in the end, everything about this bill is upholding what the Fair Housing Act has not done, which is to actually consider remedying the harm that occurred in housing discrimination prior to the passage of the act. The act has not, you know, it said coming from this moment forward, we can't discriminate. We all know that's not true, that it's happening across the board. There is still discrimination, but there is nothing in that act necessarily aside from stating that hope that had anything to do with remedy the wrong of the past. And so this is a bill that is doing it, is first in the nation bill, and we are continuing to push the vision of that so that the bill is in the spirit of the intent. And so I hope you will all chime in. I'm going to just quickly give you an update that the Covenant Homeownership account budget proviso is not moving forward. You will not find it in the operating budget. As part of the realities of the current budget difficulties, it became very clear that proviso was not going to be able to move forward. So that is not something we're watching or monitoring anymore, but it is something that we will take in and think about for 2026, how we can make sure that would have been that buying for development assistance, that's coming forward once we're out of this particular session. But for now, the CHA budget proviso is not in play. The Scalable Starter Home Production Plan Demonstration Project is in the budget. And again, as we heard from Jesse, the budget is about to really go into some deep time here after we get through most of the legislation. And so we will continue to provide opportunities for advocacy there and see if that can happen. But I don't have any, any magic to know what's going to happen in the end with all of that budget scenario. But we're very close to passage of the trailer bill, and I hope you will lean in. I will provide opportunities. There is one in the chat right now, and I hope you'll take time today to make sure that you send out those letters. So that's a lot of state stuff. That's a lot of both, good highs and lows in thinking about what we're talking about here. So we're going to take the opportunity to close through the last part of our meeting here with a little bit more of a local focus in terms of talking about the city of Seattle and the Seattle Comprehensive Plan. We're going to understand from Jesse where the council is and the city is in that process. And then we're going to have the opportunity to hear from Jessica about how she's teeing into that process and how she's looking to help you activate. So, Jesse.
Sorry, unmute. Sorry, we'll go straight to Jess to do a quick round of intro before you hop off to the other meeting.
Sure thing. Can you all hear me? I was having a little trouble in my audio. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Jess, she, her. I think I introduced myself at the last meeting, but I'll introduce myself in a little more detail here. It's really nice to meet you all and be in this space with you all. And thank you, Amy and Jesse, for convening this wonderful meeting. So just a little bit about me, I guess. I started homelessness and housing work in, I don't know, like 2016. In the middle of college, I started at this like small undergraduate run nonprofit where we really built community with the unhoused folks who were our neighbors in Berkeley, where I went to school. It was an amazing organization. That's kind of where I get my grassroots organizing, community organizing sort of focus and my perspective as I continue forward with my work. So from there, after I graduated, I worked in direct service for a couple of years in San Francisco. I worked as a residential counselor and also a housing coordinator, just helping some folks, usually folks with serious mental illness, as well as substance use disorders, find housing, and it was not easy, I'll tell you. And so I decided to go to grad school, kind of make a bigger change after that. So I have a master's in social work and a master's in public health, and both of those degrees were policy focused. And I was really hoping to work in housing policy. And I got the opportunity in my last year internship as part of my social work degree. And I worked in New York City in a supportive housing organization that was really focused on policy, or had a good focus on policy. They ran about 20 programs, so they were mid-sized in New York, but here would be really large. And we did a lot of great work at the local and state level. So that's kind of all that brings me here, where I'm now really focused on the comp plan, as well as some of our work on the east side. And I guess I'll tell you a little bit about the work that me and Jesse are doing together. So just I guess I'm focused on a lot of our outside organizing in community and trying to get to know folks and their feelings on the comp plan and get people activated and in our actions, talking to council members. And one of those asks actually, which I'm sure Jesse will tell you more about, is that we have a coalition letter for this month that we're planning to send to city council later this month. And I'm going to put the link in the chat. But our ask is that you take that time to read it and sign it if you feel able. All right. And Jesse, do you want to take over the background? Or do you want me to do it?
Sure, I can talk more about the letter. This is basically building off of the previous advocacy letters that we've sent as part of the Complete Communities Coalition, which the Black Home Initiative and many of our partner organizations have signed on to. Unlike the previous letters were addressed to the mayor's office and to Office of Planning and Community Development, this version is really targeted to the council themselves to keep up the pressure as we go into the final council process. And I can give a little more update on where we stand in that whole process. It's been a little gummed up, but we are moving ahead with this refreshed letter, making some specific asks. We've gotten over 50 organizations already signed on, spanning the gamut, but always still looking for more. So if you want to, please do fill out that form and add your name to the diverse range of stakeholders calling for a bold comprehensive plan update.
Thanks, Jesse. I think that's all for me. Does anyone have any questions for me about my work, my role?
Maybe you could just talk a bit about some of the upcoming events we've got over
Sure.
the April 23rd meeting, and then particularly Affordable Housing Week.
Sure thing. Yeah, so we've got a bunch of events coming up. So as part of the Complete Communities Coalition, we're continuing to run socials partnered with the Urbanist. Did they go out in the newsletter? You can find them on our website as well. So the next one is today, actually, from 6 to 8 p.m. I'm sorry, I'm pulling it up. At Big Ten Brewery and Ale House. And then we also have a housing panel on the 23rd. That one is from 6 to 8 p.m. as well. And that one will be at El Centro de la Raza. And that panel will include it's the future of housing panel being run by the Urbanist and Seattle YIMBY. And just a bunch of experts, including Jesse, will be talking about current progress on the comp plan. And then finally, for Affordable Housing Week, we have a comp plan letter writing workshop that's taking place on the 13th. That will be located at MG2. It's going to be from 5 to 7 p.m. And that's just, a workshop where there will be some education around the comp plan, and then basically what you can do as individuals and organizations to help us get the word out and get city council looking at their constituents and what they think about the comp plan.
Okay.
Jesse, you want to take that question?
Yeah, I'll step back first in terms of where council stands. So right now, there is currently an ongoing appeal of the final environmental impact statement. Most of the appeals filed have been summarily dismissed, but there is at least one that will need to go through the hearing examiner process. That's going to get kicked off at the end of this month, April 28th, and continue for at least a couple of weeks. We don't know much beyond that. Could delay the process longer, but we are planning for at least a couple of weeks delay. This is pushing the timeline for HB 1110 and the middle housing implementation beyond the required commerce timeline. And so council is running interim legislation to implement HB 1110. And they're running that over the course of the next month and a half. Amendment concepts have been drafted and put into place. Council will be discussing those. I think there's a next meeting, a meeting next Wednesday of the select committee to have some of that reviewed. And then it'll swing into another council process with some public hearing in there. Following resolution of, and what that interim legislation does is broadly port over what the Department of Commerce model code, so will allow for up to 4 plexes citywide, setting aside the recommended development standards by Commerce. It does not include the stacked flat bonus or affordable housing density bonus, which have been important and popular parts of the neighborhood residential implementation for the comp plan, but which the city considers to be too tied up in the ongoing litigation of the environmental impact statement to move forward at this point in time. Once that's resolved, we expect the council will proceed with the phase 1 ordinance to actually do the permanent legislation for middle housing, implement the maps, put together the final maps of the high level future land use. And then in phase 2, which hopefully can be finished in 2025, but that's starting to look maybe a little more suspect, to implement the specific zoning changes for non-middle housing for all of the neighborhood centers, transit corridors, and expanded urban centers. In terms of how the council is treating, or how the mayor's proposal has proposed treating mandatory housing affordability, the mayor's proposal does not implement MHA in the existing neighborhood residential areas that are remaining neighborhood residential. It does implement MHA in the areas that are getting upzoned to a fuller multifamily level of low rise or higher. So if in the areas where it's currently neighborhood residential, will continue to be neighborhood residential, but that will allow for 4 plexes, no MHA. In the chunks of the city that are getting upzoned further to as part of a neighborhood center or urban center, then MHA would be applicable to developments. And that is currently one thing that council is discussing. Any questions from folks on that?
Jesse, just, to understand, you're saying that they're going through this middle housing process right now, and that the comprehensive plan process itself is kind of in a challenge moment, and so they're having that work its way out. But in terms of the overall calendar for the rest of the year, we're expecting that middle housing is happening now in the spring, and there'll be an opportunity for people to be able to chime in there in public comment.
Yeah, they'll have to have some sort of public hearing on the interim middle housing legislation in May. That might be a smaller version than the February 5th public hearing, for instance, because it might just be like keeping it down to like a public hearing within council chambers during the normal afternoon times. We don't have much of an idea specifically. In terms of the timeline beyond that, like they have to pass the middle housing legislation by the end of May. In terms of timeline beyond that, a lot of that's contingent on how the appeal goes.
So we're a bit in a waiting game, but
Yep.
Yeah.
Bit of a holding pattern again.
and so I am sure that you know, Jessica and Jesse, you know, being able to provide us with opportunities for input and certainly can be reached out to as well. So they can, you know, put their emails in the chat here. Much to that same spirit that we were talking about before, a lot of the comments around Frank Chop, you know, we're excited to have another community organizer in the room and dedicating their work on that level. And that is an opportunity for those of you in the network to have a connection, to be able to ask those questions you have or push, you know, your view of how the positioning should go. And that would change it, right? So that's the point. The point is to listen and to understand and to, you know what to do in next steps as we move forward, because it is a dynamic process. So, you know, we often think that these are really big political kind of brush marks and we're just going to get lost in it. And I'm just offering that both Jesse and Jessica are here to lean in for you and understand what you're thinking, what you're saying, so that they have the most informed version of moving forward as they do their advocacy. Jesse, did you have anything else you wanted to add around comp plan aside from, you know, once we see those opportunities come through, I will certainly, of course, put them in our digest as well. And that you and Jessica are there to be able to, you know, hear from the network.
Yeah, just couple things to highlight in terms of the advocacy letter, what we're asking for. It's again coordinated with our previous letters, you know, expanding the stacked flat density bonus, expanding affordable housing density bonus citywide, not just near frequent transit, to create a new affordable housing density bonus for the low-rise zones. It will eliminate parking requirements near frequent transit, add additional neighborhood centers in low displacement risk and high opportunity areas like North Queen Anne, North Broadway, Alki Gasworks, and Loyal Heights, expand small scale commercial in neighborhoods, and expand mixed use housing near frequent transit. And you can, the form letter to sign up links directly to the coalition letter as drafted, and you can see who's signed on and more of the details there.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for joining us today. Thank you, Jesse, for joining us on a couple of topics. Appreciate that. And we are towards the end of our meeting here. I do leave these last minutes at the end of the meeting for an open floor. So if you have an announcement that's a good of the whole or a question, Cliff, looks like you have a question.
Well, I have two things to contribute. First of all, thank you for your moderation of this Space Bambi. And Jesse, I must say, hearing about the Complete Communities Coalition brings a sense of nostalgia to me. So I was this close to jumping in. But you know, I know that you and Jess are going to do wonders. So thank you for your ongoing work as well as everyone else. So I want to share something. I don't know if you guys heard about this. I'm just going to put the link in the chat. So Commerce has been embarking upon a new outreach effort, particularly looking towards getting feedback from the community on how we're doing, on how our programs are working or not working, and how we can do better. So I put the link in the chat that takes you to a community engagement page, and you can do one or both or two things. Take an online survey. It's supposed to be 5 minutes or less, so it should be very, hopefully very easy. or we are putting together local focus groups. So I know this is yet another survey, yet another thing that we as Commerce, as your friendly statewide government agency is asking you to fill out. But we really value your input. And I can tell you from the meetings that our new director, former Senator Jonah Wynn, has been leading. He's very deeply committed to actually taking action based on this feedback and your recommendations. So I just wanted to share all that with you. And then the second link I'm going to put in the chat is for a project information survey. So hold on. So every couple of years, we want input from nonprofit organizations, other jurisdictions, housing authorities, community land trusts, all of you, on our housing awards and how our process either supports or could be a little bit better when it comes to the housing projects we collaborate with all of you on. So please take this survey. This one is due by May 7th at 5 p.m. So it has a bit of a clock on it. And let me just triple check and make sure. Okay. And the first survey I put in will close at the end of May. So just to be clear, the second survey I put in the chat, its due date is May 7th at 5 p.m. And the first one that's closing at the end of May, and for the local focus groups for the first survey, we're planning on holding them between the 21st of this month and June. So there's a lot of wiggle room there. So deeply appreciate you guys' input, and yeah, thanks.
Thanks for sharing the opportunities, Cliff. Denise?
Yes, thank you so much. We didn't really have an official update on Senate Bill 5686, which is the foreclosure prevention services bill. It is in rules. It is waiting to be pulled. It's not on the list that just came out, but we did just hear from one member of rules while we were here in this meeting that they are planning to pull it. So stay tuned for an action alert, because once that gets pulled and we have have it on the calendar, or even just know it's going to the floor, we will be sending an action alert asking folks to message their representatives and ask them to vote yes. So no action on that today. So plenty of time to take action on all the other important bills that we've talked about in this meeting. Stay tuned for more. Thanks.
Thanks, Denise. It's the exciting end here. And then Amanda.
Yeah, thanks, Bambi. Hi, everybody. This is Amanda DeShazo with the Tacoma Pierce County Affordable Housing Consortium. I just wanted to share with you all that we're doing Pierce County Affordable Housing Week, May 5th through 9th. So the week before King County, Seattle. And I'm working on putting the events on the website, but that's the link, and there's a little bit more information. We'll be doing virtual panels each day. I am organizing like an open house affordable housing tour, and then we'll have a networking reception as well. So hopefully you guys can join us. We're also accepting event submissions. So if you have an event that's in alignment with housing and you want us to put it on our calendar, you can go to that link. There's a button you can hit, fill out the survey, and we'll add it to our calendar so that we can share it out with the public. And this year's theme for us is going to be housing across the continuum. So everything from emergency housing up to market rate. So yeah, hopefully you can join us. Thank you.
Thanks for that reminder, Amanda. So you've got 2 weeks of excitement coming up in May. All the affordable housing talk that you really want and could have, physical tours, panels, lots coming up. So we will have that Tacoma Pierce affordable housing, and then the very following next week HDC will be having the kind of Seattle King County affordable housing that week that we will do. And everyone's working furiously to get those calendars out so that you can start to make those plans.
Yeah,
So we're at
just
the end
want
of the
to
meeting.
say, go ahead and save that week, May 12th through 16th. There's a bunch of events already up on our calendar. As of now, it's not the complete list. There's more to come, but we've got the kickoff, and you can start seeing what that week is going to look like. So hope to see you all at events there. Thanks.
All right, and I'll be sure that those links are coming through in our digest that will be happening on Friday. Hopefully on Friday when you receive that digest, we'll have lots of great news about more passing of more bills. And regardless, we're going to definitely have an ask of you so that you can use your advocacy to continue to fulfill what we're doing here with our policy actions in the affordable homeownership framework. Any other last announcements or shares for the good of the whole? We have a couple minutes. It looks like we're good. I would just like to say again, thank you. I know this has been, you know, a varied meeting. There's a lot that's going on. I completely appreciate that you are here. If that means you're here for 30 minutes and you're having your lunch and you need to move on to other things, that's excellent. If you're here for the whole time, super excellent. If you're going to watch it later, great. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I was very inspired by the event that I was talking about earlier this morning by Habitat, hearing from speakers and, you know, just really wrestling with where we've been and where we're going and where we are. But I hope you all understand that Black Home Initiative is, you know, being held up. It is being held up as an example of that network mindset of people working together from where they come from and what they can add and continuing to lean in. And so I hope you will continue to lean in. And if you have any questions for me, always reach out. If there's anyone that you want to be adding into this conversation, you know, we want them here. So again, have an amazing rest of your day and have an amazing weekend. Care for all of you. And I hope that, you know, I'll hear from some of you. I got to hug a few of you this morning, so always excited about that. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. See you later.
Thank you.
Thanks.